Welcome to Train Signal. My name is Elias Kinaser, and you're watching Getting Started with System Center 2012, Configuring and Deploying a Private Cloud. So I figured before we embark on this journey of tackling this great course, that for those of you that don't know me and haven't never watched any of my courses before, that I'd at least give you a modest virtual bio of your virtual instructor. Who is this person that is going to be talking to me for 21 lessons, and what are his qualifications? Well, for starters, I'm a huge believer in certification, and I actually have many of them credited to my name from Microsoft, Citrix, VMware, Cisco, Hitachi, EMC, and others. I've been doing this for over 15 years and have collected a number of certifications over the years. I'm currently a consultant and chief technology officer for Sigma Solutions. I'm a frequent speaker at conferences like Citrix Synergy, VMworld, Camp IT, and others. I'm an analyst and author. I've authored over 6 books. I'm a columnist at Information Week. I'm also a blogger for Forbes and Virtualization Review. I've also been awarded the VMware vExpert Award and the Citrix Technology Professional, CTP, and hopefully the Microsoft MVP soon. But don't tell anyone, okay? I absolutely love technical training. I've been doing it for many, many years now, and I've authored many books and computer-based training that are sold to my credit. These are just some of them that I wanted to share with you, some Microsoft, some Citrix, and some VMware books as well. If you're interested, these are some of my other Train Signal courses that I have published. There's also the Citrix Zen server that doesn't show up on here, but this is just kind of a snapshot of what other courses are available as well. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about this course before we actually get started. I wanted to make sure you have the right expectations, and if there are any skill gaps that you need to brush up on, that you're doing that before you actually start on this journey. I want to make sure that you're maximizing on your learning experience. So in order for you to fully grasp the concept of the Microsoft Private Cloud, you're going to realize very quickly that it is a conglomerate of a lot of different technologies that come together to form that private cloud. But at the heart of everything that we're going to be doing, I need you to have a good understanding of enterprise networking, TCP/IP, DHCP, DNS. Those are the building blocks, the networking essentials, right? I need you to have a good understanding of enterprise storage concepts. I don't want you to be an expert at the SAN and SAN fabric, but you need to understand what I'm talking about when I say SAN and iSCSI and IQNs and NFS and SMB. You need to have an idea of what those are, how they're configured, which ones are block, which one are file-based, all of that. You definitely need to have a good grasp and a good understanding of advanced Server 2012 and Server 2008 administration. You definitely need to have a very good solid understanding of Microsoft Hyper-V and Microsoft System Center Configuration Manager. If you have that experience, you'll find that this course will be much easier for you to understand, as the VMM concept and all the other components kind of were born out of SCCM, so it will definitely go a long way if you have a good understanding of SCCM. And finally, run before flying. We build upon the foundation slowly until you're ready to administer a Microsoft Private Cloud. So I'm not going to just throw everything on you. You'll notice that this course is going to be very structured, and we're doing things in a very methodical way, and I'm adding every lesson. You'll be getting more information on how to get closer to building that Microsoft Private Cloud environment. This is a little bit of the course building blocks. This is essentially the 21 lessons that we are going to spend together, and their names. I'm not going to go into gory detail on what they are and describe each one of them. As we start to tackle each one of those, you'll find that we cover the material here quite extensively. The why and how of this course. Why is this course in the order we have it? That's a question that I get frequently asked. Well, it's the order that makes the most sense when you're teaching someone with limited or no Microsoft Private Cloud background. So there's a couple of different things that are going on here, right? So there's my method of training, the way that I feel I can relay this content to you in the most productive, most logical way for you to kind of absorb it. Because I go through a lot of this material, and sometimes the material and the structure that it is presented by the manufacturer or by the developer of the actual software, sometimes it doesn't flow properly when you're actually implementing things. Sometimes you want it in a different order because it makes more sense. So I'm bringing a lot of my real-world experience to this teaching course, and I'm teaching it in a way where when you're going about deploying it, it makes sense logically for you. Now, another question that I frequently get asked is, hey, can I jump around and watch any videos in the series? Well, the obvious answer is sure. I can't stop you, right? However, depending on your experience, on your current experience and understanding of the Microsoft Private Cloud, the answer could be it depends. Well, you can say that's a typical consultant answer, but it really depends. If you have previous Microsoft Private Cloud experience, or if you understand it to a larger extent, then you can jump around. However, if this is your first shot at it, or if you're trying to go maybe take the certification, or if you just want to learn it and you need some kind of a structured way of doing it, then my advice to you is don't jump around the first go around. If this is the first time you're watching these videos, then watch them in the order in which I'm presenting them, and then later on, if you need to reinforce your knowledge or any of that, then well, you can jump around at that point. But if this is your first shot, first go ahead, I would stay in a structured manner. Are the skills taught in order of exam objectives? Well, at times, right? So sometimes it's based on the exam objectives and it goes according to that. Other times it just doesn't flow correctly. So we've modified the course again to meet the exam objectives, but we also want to arm you with real world experience. You're not going to gain anything if you just get that piece of paper that says, well, you're certified. If when you go about trying to implement this in the real world, your logic isn't flowing correctly. So what we've done is, where it makes sense, we're absolutely adhering to the exam objectives and the order in which they are positioned or given to us. And at other times, we are presenting this information to you in the order in which it makes most sense for you to learn, but also to deploy a Microsoft Private Cloud successfully. What features within the course can assist me to learn? Well, a little later on, we're going to talk about your lab setup. That's going to be very important, especially if you're going to be following along or if you're going to be building a lab in order to implement a lot of the exercises that we're going to be doing on screen. I highly recommend that you do that, and those are some of the slides that you want to pay attention to. Now, of course, you're going to be asking, well, what do I need in order to follow along with the instructions that you're going to be giving? The lab is always interesting. Whenever anyone asks me, well, how do we build a lab? I will talk to you about what I've done, what my lab looks like, but I'll also share with you what you can do with your own lab if you don't have access to this type of equipment. So in my lab, I have two servers, essentially. One of them I've named esx01.wiredbraincoffee.com with this IP address, and the other one is esx02 and with the IP address as well that you see on the screen. I'm using as a hypervisor VMware ESX 5.1 on both of them, so that is my thin layer of abstraction that I'm using in order to add virtual machines, and I'll show you the different types of virtual machines that I have. My processor is an Intel Core i5 on both of these boxes. I have Intel VT enabled within the BIOS. I have 16 gig of RAM on each one of those boxes. On one of them I have 1 terabyte SATA drive. This is the local internal disk, and I also have a 200 gig SSD that we're going to utilize during the private cloud course to have classification of storage. I have a 1 gig NIC on each. So this is, from a high-level overview, the infrastructure that I have. Now, if you have a different type of server that could take 32 gig of memory and you don't need 2, well, more power to you, you can do that. If you have a laptop, for instance, where you have Windows on it and you have 32 gig of RAM and you have SSD and all that, and you don't want to use VMware ESXi, you can use Windows and then layer that with VMware Workstation, for example, which would then allow you to add virtual machines and be able to build your lab that way. So it doesn't have to be this configuration. We just need some kind of a way to carve up these virtual machines because we're going to need quite a few of them. Now, one last thing that I want to make mention here, and I'm going to mention this just because it's a Microsoft course, and I have VMware ESXi 5.1 and a lot of that deployed in my lab. There's several reasons why I've done that, right? Well, for starters, in this particular course, I'm going to need at one point to have Zen Server also virtualized. I'm going to need the VMware vCenter virtualized. I'm going to need VMware ESXi also virtualized. So because of these reasons, it was just easier for me to use VMware ESXi. But the real reason between you and I is I had this lab pre-existing that I've used for other courses and for other things that I have going on. And I already had, like, for instance, a domain controller that was already configured. I already had a vCenter server that was already configured. I had all my templates that were built and ready to go. So it just made it easy for me to deploy my course. But there is no reason whatsoever that would stop you from using, for example, Windows Server 2012 as your hypervisor. use Hyper-V, put that on the actual hardware, and then build upon that, there would be nothing to stop you from doing that. It doesn't really affect anything that we're doing in this course. Again, this is my existing lab configuration, my hardware configuration. For you, it could vary a little bit, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that there was no technical reason why VMware ESX i5.1 was being used for this course. So these are the virtual machines that we're going to be working with during this course. So I have up here a domain controller. I have the virtual machine that we're going to install the VMM management console on. I have a virtual machine that I'm running essentially for my storage, which I'm calling SAN. And then different components that we're going to talk about. So, System Center Operations, Service Manager, Ops Manager, System Center Orchestrator here, Ops Manager, Data Protection Manager. We're going to need a reference server for when we talk about server app V and how we sequence applications. I have 3 Hyper-V hosts that are also virtual machines, and these are some of the NICs that are associated with them and some of the IPs that we're going to be assigning. My domain is going to be wiredbraincoffee.com. This is my gateway and my DNS, and we're also going to need a virtual machine that we're installing the management PC. We're calling this the management PC with all the management consoles on it with just Windows 7, essentially 64-bit that I'm using. From a lab software requirements perspective, you need access to the Windows Server 2012 ISOs. You need access to the Windows 7 ISOs, whether it's 32-bit or 64-bit. System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2012 Service Pack 1. All the ISOs that come with that, the app controller, orchestrator, everything that comes with that, you're going to need access to it. SQL Server 2008 R2 Service Pack 1. Again, you might be using SQL Server 2012 or some other version. As long as it's supported, and I'll mention where it's needed, you're going to need to have access to that. I'm using VMware ESX i5.1. That doesn't mean that you need to use that, but if you're going to follow along, this is what I'm using. One thing that I do want to make mention here that will help you avoid some issues down the line is if you're going to use VMware ESX i5.1, I want you to ensure that the virtual machine network switch, the virtual switch, that you are connecting your Hyper-V hosts to, I want you to have promiscuous mode set to accept. And the reason for that is while we're making Hyper-V a virtual machine on top of ESX, that's going to be pingable and networkable, and that's all great. As soon as we have a nested virtual machine within Hyper-V, that nested virtual machine you won't be able to ping it or communicate with it until your promiscuous mode is set to accept. So make sure that is set ahead of time so that you avoid troubleshooting issues later on. So my closing advice and encouragement before we go ahead and get started with this course is make the training enjoyable. Have a good time, have fun, set up your own servers, learn at your own pace. Don't try to take 21 lessons and do it in 21 days. It's a lot to understand. There's a lot of concepts. You're going to come up against challenges. Some things aren't going to work. Other things you're going to have to troubleshoot. Google is your best friend. Learning, that troubleshooting is part of your learning. I don't want you to despair when you find something that's not working the way I'm showing it to you on the screen, because that's part of your learning process. Your environment is going to be slightly different than mine. Even if you mimic everything that I'm doing, exactly same hardware, your environment is going to be slightly different. So don't be discouraged. If you go at a problem for an extended period of time, 20, 30 minutes, an hour, and you can't fix it, go outside, have a soda, have a pop, play some Call of Duty, do something to, clear your mind and come back to it, and you'll be able to look at it from a clearer mind. You'll find that you're able to attack it very easily. Also, be stubborn. If something isn't working, try to find the solution. Don't just let it go. Don't give up. That's part of your learning process. I also invite you to join the Microsoft community. Microsoft has a very active social media presence on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, everywhere, on LinkedIn. So make sure you find those correct hashtags. Follow the Microsoft blogs. Follow my blogs. Join Microsoft user groups wherever you find them in your community, and just make sure you're always engaging, learning from your peers, networking. Networking is going to help you find jobs. It's going to help you learn. It's going to help you have someone that you can go to in the event that you should have an issue that you can't resolve. So don't try to isolate yourself onto your computer screen in your house. Get outside and network and learn. There's no question that's a stupid question. There's no question that's a dumb question. Ask questions, expect to learn, and also after you've learned the material in this course and in other courses, make sure you share that material with others. The way I'm sharing with you, I want you to also share with others. Learning Microsoft Private Cloud literally makes you part of a special group of elites, best of the best when it comes to cloud. And we're going to try to make you better. So welcome, and let's go ahead and have some fun.